He gets a new stepsister, and she's the most beautiful girl in school. If you dig my recaps, don't forget to subscribe and smash that notification bell. The anime begins with two young people reflecting on how step-siblings are essentially just two strangers having become siblings suddenly and not spending much time together. The guy named Yuta Asamura thinks about how movies and books often portray step-siblings becoming romantic partners, having a relationship as a man and woman with the excuse of having no blood relation, despite the fact that these fictional worlds are very different from reality. Meanwhile, the girl named Saki Ice reflects that people often say all siblings start off as strangers, but in the case of step-siblings, this doesn't change, they remain strangers until the end. Then they pass each other on the street without even noticing, as they are just two strangers. They go their separate ways and Saki meets up with her mother, while Yuta arrives at his workplace where he greets his colleague Yomiuri. Later, Saki and her mother Ekiko meet a man at a restaurant, and the next day we discover he is Yuta's father Teichai, who tells his son that he plans to remarry. Teichai explains that the woman works at a bar and that he met her when he went there with his boss. He also mentions that he has arranged a meeting for that night so Yuta can meet her, expecting his presence after work. Yuta is not bothered by his father's new marriage, saying that what matters is his father's happiness. After all, nothing will change in his life. However, Teichai warns that contrary to what Yuta thought, his life will change because he will get a new younger sister, the daughter of his father's new wife. Before the meeting, Yuta sees a photo of his new sister, a small child. But when he arrives at the bar where they arrange to meet, Yuta introduces himself and meets Akiko, his father's new wife, and her daughter Saki, who is practically his age. The guy is surprised, and Teichai explains that he celebrates his birthday a week before hers, making him the older brother, even though they are both in their second year of high school. Akiko realizes the misunderstanding and explains to Yuta that the photo he saw of Saki was from when she was a child, as after she grew up, she never allowed anyone to take pictures of her again. The girl justifies this by saying she is not photogenic at all. Later, in the bar's bathroom, Saki tells Yuta she was relieved to see that he wasn't scary since they would be living together from now on. Yuta says that scary people can often look gentle. The girl then responds that Teichai mentioned he is a hardworking guy saving up for college and getting excellent grades in school. Yuta retorts that criminals can also be very smart, which makes the girl burst into laughter. Later, they leave the bar together and Saki says she wants to tell Yuta something before their parents come out, as it is something she can only tell him. Yuta jokes that he must be an amazing person to have earned her trust so quickly. Saki comments that his humor and way of speaking make her think he is an easy person to get along with, and precisely because of that, he should be able to understand what she wants to say. Then Saki says she has no expectations of Yuta and doesn't want him to have any expectations of her either. The girl asks if he understands what she means, and he confirms, saying he is relieved, which makes her feel the same way. A few days later, Teichai thoroughly cleans his house to receive his wife, and Saki worried about making a good impression on them. Yuta finds his father's behavior strange, who explains that when you reach his age, this kind of thing becomes critical. At that moment, the two Iases arrive, bringing several bags full of things as a way for Akiko to show gratitude for being welcome. Teichai finds the woman's exaggeration strange, just as Yuta found his father's sudden obsession with cleaning odd. Then Saki explains that her mother doesn't know how to say no and ended up buying everything that was recommended to her, making Akiko embarrassed by her daughter's honesty. As soon as they enter the house, Akiko notices the cleanliness. Yuta starts to say that he and his father had been cleaning the house non-stop for the past few days, but Akiko comments that Teichai had mentioned how much they enjoy cleaning. So Yuta decides not to spoil the image his father wants to create and says that the Asamura family motto is to eliminate every speck of dust. Saki finds the family motto a bit exaggerated given Teichai's apparent obsession with cleanliness. He welcomes them both and says he hopes the four of them can have a happy life under the same roof. With the exaggeration of trying to make a good impression, Saki and Akiko laugh at the situation and say it will be a pleasure to live there. Then Yuta shows Saki her room and explains that he and his father already set up the curtains and the bed, and they they also placed a desk, but she can change and arrange everything as she prefers. The girl looks around her new room and comments on how spacious it is. Yuta says it's a normal size, and Saki explains that she and her mother lived in an old studio apartment, so she never had her own room. The guy asks if the two of them slept together, and Saki tells him that her mother works at night, having a completely different routine, and for that reason she always slept alone. Then Yuta apologizes, imagining that her previous life must have been more comfortable than now having to live with two men in the same house. Saki says she doesn't mind and asks why he is being so formal with her since they are the same age. The girl explains that she doesn't mind the way he talks, but she imagines it must be normal for him to be more casual with friends and classmates, and for that reason he doesn't need to speak so formally just to please her, if that's the reason for his formality. Yuta explains that his intention is not exactly to please her, and to clear any doubts he asks Saki if she prefers that he doesn't speak formally with her. The girl decides to be honest and says she would feel more at ease if he used a more relaxed tone when talking to her. After all, he doesn't owe her any respect or anything like that. Immediately, Yuta drops the formality, making Saki a bit taken aback by the speed of the change. He explains that it will be difficult for them to talk as if they were old friends, but since she is being honest and making her preferences clear, it makes things much easier for him. Saki laughs and comments that she's happy they can resolve their differences. She shares that her friends at school don't take her way of dealing with things seriously because they laugh and say it seems like she wants to make a contract with them. Saki continues saying that because of this, she cut ties with everyone except for one person, as she didn't care about the rest since they didn't understand what they were thinking, and it seemed like a waste of time trying to please boys who didn't even try to communicate. Afterwards, Yuta offers to help Saki organize her things, and she accepts his help. Thus, while Akiko and Saki get to know the house better and settle in, Yuta helps unpack the moving boxes, even accidentally finding a piece of the girl's intimate clothing. The guy feels embarrassed by the situation, and Saki and her parents laugh at him. Later, Yuta asks if Saki goes to Suisai High School. She confirms and asks if he finds it strange that a girl attends a preparatory school. He denies it and explains that he's asking because he also studies there. Then Yuta says that if possible he would like them to pretend to be strangers at school, apologizing for his request. Saki responds that she doesn't mind since it doesn't matter to her, and maybe it's better for him that way. Yuta starts to reply when his phone rings, interrupting the conversation. Saki says he can feel free to leave or take the call in front of her if he prefers. He thanks her and leaves the room to answer the call. The next day during his shift, his coworker Yomiuri says he smells like a girl and asks if he has a girlfriend. Yuta is surprised to smell like Saki, and Yomiuri continues teasing, wondering how many hours he spent next to the girl to end up smelling like that. He doesn't like the joke and says he's leaving, making Yomiuri apologize, as he had already told her that he got a sister, and so she assumed the girl had already moved in. Then Yomiuri asks if his sister is pretty, and when Yuta confirms, she jokes that he's lucky to be living with a beautiful girl. He immediately says that nothing will happen between them and that she should behave better. Yomiuri apologizes for her jokes and explains that she's like that because she always attended girls' schools, which makes Yuta comment that she's ruining the reputation of girls' schools. Then he says he's worried and asks Yomiuri what kind of behavior is expected between siblings. His coworker responds that in his case, he just needs to act naturally. After work, Yuta walks home, where he immediately takes off his shoes as usual and sees Saki on the couch. He announces that he's home as a greeting, and the girl doesn't know how to respond. Saki apologizes for her reaction and explains that no one ever said anything to her when they came home, as her mother always had a routine with different hours than hers. At that moment, the girl notices that Yuta is serious and says it's okay since it's not like he treated her badly or anything like that. Saki continues saying that her mother would arrive from work when she was at school and leave again for work when she returned from school, and because of this routine they never met. Yuta comments that they seemed very close to each other. Saki responds that they are still mother and daughter, and says that earlier they managed to go shopping together after a long time, and because of that her day was very fun. Yuta ends the conversation by asking if the bath was ready and which of them would bathe first. He ends up going first, and the girl observes the bath being prepared. After a while, when he finishes his bath, Saki is already in her room with the door closed. He just knocks on the door to let her know that everything is ready for her to take take a bath, wishes her good night, and goes to his room, closing the door. After her bath before going to bed, she notices the lighting in the house, observing how everything was different from what she was used to. On a Sunday morning in mid-July, Yuta wakes up with the usual laziness that this day of the week brings. Eventually, he reluctantly goes downstairs and finds Saki washing the dishes. After exchanging good morning out of politeness, she thanks Yuta for preparing the bath, mentioning that the water was at the perfect temperature, but she says that from now on it won't be necessary anymore because it wastes water. Visibly downcast, the girl announces that she'll go ahead and leaves the boy standing there unable to react. Later at school, Yuka observes his stepsister in the courtyard. Maru approaches and mentions that he usually doesn't meddle in other people's love lives, but he advises his friend to give up trying anything with her. Yuka hadn't been thinking about it, especially since he never imagined that a pretty girl like her would ever want to go out with him. Maru points out that dating her might look bad, particularly because he's heard some unpleasant rumors about Saki selling herself, if you know what he means. According to him, Saki is one of those well-groomed egocentric blondes who keep people at a distance, someone who doesn't fit into any group. Some people have even seen her in the motel district. One day, a guy from the baseball team confessed his feelings to her, and Saki responded that she's as bad as people say and has no desire to date anyone. Yuta wonders if she just meant that about the guy who approached her, but his friend has heard similar stories from other clubs where the protagonist's sister rejected other boys in the same way. After saying this, Maru tries to change the subject, asking his friend what it's like to have a sister living in the same house. However, he soon realizes he needs to change and get back to class, so they end the conversation and go their separate ways. Later, during tennis class, Maya announces that she will use her secret weapon, the Grand Heavenly Serve, but she ends up double faulting again. Despite everything, her opponent takes it in stride, and the two start interacting amiably. Nearby, Yuta watches his stepsister out of the corner of his eye, lost in her own world with her headphones on, and he decides to strike up a conversation, expressing his concern about seeing someone he knows skipping class. She asks if he's going to start giving her a big brother lecture, but Yuta knows he's in no position to moralize, so he just says he was surprised to learn that Saki chose tennis as her sport. She explains that Maya wanted them to choose the same sport, but that's not the only reason. Yuta asks if the redhead is one of Saki's friends, and she responds affirmatively, though it seems Maya is more of everyone's friend than hers specifically. Taking advantage of the topic, Saki wants to know why Yuta chose tennis, but he's embarrassed to say. She reassures him, saying her reason is also a bit ridiculous, so he admits that he chose it because there are no team matches. He doesn't like relying on others or having others rely on him. Saki says they're similar in that regard because she didn't want to participate in a team sport to avoid getting close to others. Yuta is surprised considering that people like her are usually the center of attention, but she prefers things as they are, with everyone in one corner and her in another enjoying peace and quiet. With that said, Yuta asks if she wants peace to keep her headphones on as usual. When Yuta gets home, Akiko tells him she's made dinner for him. He regrets that she went to all that trouble before going to work, as dealing with customers must be tough. She agrees that she deals with a lot of people, but as a bartender it's more relaxed, so she doesn't mind cooking occasionally. Before leaving, she asks Yuta to take care of Saki for her. In the late afternoon, Yuta is studying in his room when he hears a knock on the door. He asks the person to come in, and Saki opens the door, announcing her arrival. Not understanding why she made this announcement, he welcomes her as she turns on the light so he won't study in the dark. She then asks if Yuta knows of any easy jobs that pay well, because she needs money without committing too many hours, something around 10,000 yen per hour. Yuta doesn't know of any such job, so she mentions that she reads somewhere that if you want money you have to sell yourself. Trying not to sound disrespectful, Yuta comments that Saki should value her body more, but she replies that she already does, which is why she believes she can make a lot of money. Yuta asks if she would say that in front of her mother, and she calmly says yes, because her mother would be happy to hear that her daughter has finally matured. With that, she asks Yuta if his father wasn't proud when he started doing that, and he begins to get confused as it seems they're talking about different things. Moving away from that topic, Saki reminds him that he mentioned a job yesterday. Shortly after, the two eat something together, and Saki explains that many people are curious about why she dresses the way she does. In her opinion, her clothes are like equipped mode gear that allows her to live in society. Not fully understanding, Yuta jokingly asks if her outfit has any defense bonuses, but Saki believes there's some connection to that because after all we all fight battles all the time, even if they're not visible to the eye. Changing the subject, she asks if his mother doesn't look beautiful when she goes to work, and the boy admits she does. Saki mentions that his mother only finished high school and thinks this might bother his brother since Akiko is a beautiful woman without a college degree who works at night. People often say she is dumb or that she takes advantage of her looks. After all, if you're smart but not beautiful, they say you're a snob who pretends to be an intellectual. Now, if you're beautiful but not very smart, they say you're trying to con someone. When a beautiful woman depends on a man, she's a parasite, but if she works hard to have things on her own, she's just a spinster who couldn't get a man to support her. That's why Saki dresses the way she does, because she needs her appearance to be perfect to stand out before she has the strength to be perfect at school and work. Yuta doesn't mind any of this, but thinks it must be a bit tiring to act like that. However, the girl says it's worth it because proving others wrong is priceless. Lost in his thoughts, the boy wonders who these people Saki is referring to might be as his mind takes him to an old memory where he shared a meal with an adult woman when he was still small. Interrupting the memory, Saki asks if the boy isn't like her, but he replies that he's not that strong, as he mentioned that he doesn't like it when people have expectations of him or vice versa, and if he wants to get rid of that, she advises Yuta to be strong enough to live alone. He asks if that's why Saki wants a job so badly to live independently and not rely on others, and she admits that's the case. After finishing their meal, the boy says he'll look for a job for his sister because his superior might know something. Then he says he'd love it if his sister made miso soup for him every day, and she asks if that's a love confession. However, he just meant that it's been a long time since he had miso soup that wasn't instant, and it's hard to ask Akiko because she works so much. With that, Saki agrees to cook for him, while Yuta promises to find a job that will make the girl independent. The next day, he is surprised to see the girl making breakfast too, even though the deal was just miso soup for dinner. However, Saki has a policy of giving more than she receives. Next to the young man, Teichai gets emotional seeing the girl preparing breakfast and leaves after eating. As Yuta is slow to eat, Saki asks if he liked it, but the thing is the boy is used to eating fried eggs with soy sauce, but makes it clear it's her fault because she didn't know. So they agree to talk about his food preferences whenever possible. At work, while Yuta reads a book on how to make money, Shiori comments that he's really focused on changing his life. He replies that's somewhat true because he wants to live alone after graduation, as he now has a sister his age and it will be difficult to live together. Shiori understands that her friend wants to live alone but doesn't believe it's because of his sister. According to her, having a sister the same age as you is like an investment. Finally, she says it's okay to depend on others if Yuta can't live alone. After all, it's good to have money, but it's not a sin not to have it. Besides, even the presidents of the richest companies need other people. And of course, a pretty university student like Shiori has one or two sugar daddies. Yuta is shocked by this statement, but the girl was just joking with him. Anyway, she really believes Yuta should think about these things calmly and not be ashamed of depending on family for now. At night, the boy returns to dinner with his sister and tells her what Shiori said. Saki comments that this Shiori must be like one of those older sisters who are beautiful, friendly, and smart, and what she said is true, but makes it clear she doesn't intend to change her mind about being independent. Yuta asks if she couldn't depend on him and his father, and the girl knows they are trustworthy, but believes everything would be easier if Yuta were a bad person. Without explaining what she meant, she gets up after finishing eating and says goodbye. Shortly after, as he leaves the bath, the boy sees something left for him in the hallway. When dawn breaks, he sees his sister on her way to school and approaches, but keeps a certain distance. Distracted, Saki listens to her music with headphones as usual. Crossing the street inattentively, she doesn't notice a speeding car coming and Yuta tries to help. Later, during tennis class, Maya is drawing everyone's attention with her extroverted behavior as usual, and Saki is her partner in the game. Earlier, Yuta had to play the big brother role because his sister's recklessness almost led to her death. With her broken headphones on the ground, she hugs her backpack to feel any support, even if it's it's not real. Then she apologizes. After the match, Saki looks directly at her brother, but walks away from him. When school ends, he grabs his things from his locker and sees Saki outside the school without an umbrella in the pouring rain. So he looks at the umbrella in his hand. When he gets home, the guy is completely drenched because he had lent the umbrella to his sister. While taking a bath, he remembers Saki's words about how we fight invisible battles all the time, and even if it's hard, it's always worth showing others they are wrong. As he leaves the bath, he finds Saki and Maya on the living room sofa. One day later, when he wakes up, Yuta remembers when he was welcomed by the two girls because Maya wanted to see Saki's house. When her friend steps out for a bit, Saki's sister tells the boy that she couldn't inform him because he wasn't answering his phone. Yuta takes it in stride, assuming he might have been in the shower or something at the time. With that said, she takes the opportunity to ask for his contact information. The next morning, he hears Saki and her mother talking and deciding to have breakfast together, happy because it had been a long time since they had done that. A little later, everyone sits at the table together and shares a meal of Japanese omelet with white dashi. Enjoying the food, Yuta remembers their agreement and mentions to his sister that he loves fried eggs. She responds that she'll try to make one when she feels like it. After breakfast, Yuta helps with the dishes and asks if he can wash Saki's and her mom's clothes together in the washing machine. Akiko appreciates the boy's kindness, but points out that washing such delicate fabrics is a bit complicated. After all, it requires a special net to protect the clothes, and Yuta had no idea about that. To make matters worse, Saki's mother asks in front of her if Yuta would like her to wash his underwear since she'll be washing her husband's. On their way to school, Saki asks to walk with her new brother, and along the way confesses that she agreed with their mom not to accept his help with the laundry because she realized Yuta isn't good at it, even though she rejects those traditional gender roles. In fact, she even wonders if he might be the kind of guy who secretly wears panties with lipstick or something. Yuta asks her to calm down and wants to know where she got that idea, but as she insists it's possible, he gets offended and turns away. Saki argues that he even does his eyebrows. He explains that he gets them done at the barber's and that it's an alpha thing. Besides, the shape of his eyebrows is natural, which makes the girl envious. She asks her brother if he doesn't think it's bad to fit gender differences into just two categories, and Yuta isn't sure what to say about that, but thinks it's probably bad. In any case, Saki apologizes if she crossed a line in their conversation, but Yuta believes that sometimes we say things impulsively and that it's important to know how to respond in kind to practice reflexes. Even so, Saki fears saying prejudiced things and ending up discriminating against someone different from her. Seeing that this really upset her, Yuta tells her that she seems like the type who reflects on what she says and rethinks if it's right or not, so she shouldn't worry too much. With that said, Saki walks past her brother shaking her earrings that suit her so well while saying he understands her too well. Unintentionally, this stirs something in the boy's heart. Hours later, when he gets home from school, Yuta sees the women's underwear on the clothesline and feels embarrassed when his sister arrives at the same time, so he rushes off to change for work. At work, he receives a message from Saki asking if he was looking at the underwear since he got all nervous when she noticed. But she doesn't accuse her brother of wanting to steal the panties. In fact, she thinks she was unfair and that the boy was just scared of giving the wrong impression. When talking to him about it, as soon as he gets home, Saki gives him a hot chocolate and says she evened the score. She believes that looking at her underwear was purely reflexive, and in the same way, she says he is capable of reflecting on his actions and reconsidering them. However, the girl goes further and teases him, asking if the panties were charming enough to catch his attention. Yuta doesn't fall into the trap, but admits that for a moment he thought about stealing one of them, but wanting to do something and actually doing it are completely different things. Finally, Saki agrees and wishes her brother good night. The next day, as usual, Yuta sees Saki alone in a corner of the tennis court with her headphones on until Maya comes up behind him and calls him Big Brother. While Yuta asks her not to do that at school, she wonders what's up with Saki as she's been acting strange since early morning. With that on his mind, he sends a message to his sister asking if something happened, and she replies as dryly as possible that nothing did. At dinner that day, when the two meet again, he apologizes for not finding a well-paying job, but she didn't expect that to happen quickly. With her usual melancholic demeanor, Saki takes her bath and puts a hairpin in her hair as she looks in the mirror. While her brother reads a book lying on the bed, she approaches silently through the corridor, opens the door handle, and turns off the the light. Not understanding anything, Yuta lets the book fall on his face as his sister undresses and slowly approaches to caress Yuta's face. Referring to him by his last name, Asamura Saki Ayase asks if he is willing to buy her. At this moment, we see the memory of when the girl arrived at her new home from her perspective. On that Sunday, the feeling that marked her most was relief. Relief for finding two men she could trust, and the best part was that she realized it as soon as she arrived. From the first moment, Saki knew she had gained a brother who cares about how she feels and who is even capable of preparing a bath for her after he finishes. She never imagined he was in the same school, and that was the cherry on top. On Monday, Yuta struck up a conversation with her at school, and she noticed he was even more easygoing than she had thought. Honestly, the girl was bothered by the fact that he believed the rumors about her, but she didn't blame her brother for knowing how others viewed her. In his defense, he got upset when he heard the truth from her and cared that she was displeased. It might have been the first time in her life that someone understood Saki Ayase's feelings without trying. On Tuesday, she wrote a reminder not to forget that her brother likes fried eggs with soy sauce because she had promised to cook for him every day until he found a job that paid well enough for both of them. In her mind, this was the least she could do. When Yuta says he still hasn't found that job, it seems like an apology, but Saki always knew it wouldn't be easy, so she doesn't pressure him at all. After all that talk about knowing how to depend on others in the right way. Even though at first the girl didn't like the idea, she discovered she could do this for her brother. On Wednesday, focused on her music, Saki didn't see the car passing on the street and was almost hit, but her brother saved her in time. After avoiding a tragedy, he asked her to pay more attention to what she was doing, and seeing Yuta act like an older brother stirred a strange feeling in the girl. But that day had another event in store for later. That same Wednesday, Maya came to spend a few days at Saki's house, and the three of them laughed a lot while playing video games together. It had been a long time since Saki had laughed so much. At the end of the day, they all exchanged contacts to stay in touch more often. Looking at her brother's profile picture, she noticed it was a beautiful landscape which suited him well. On Thursday, he said that wanting to do something is quite different from actually doing it, and Saki agreed with that thought. In fact, she started to feel that every time Yuta shared his thoughts, there was always something she agreed with and liked to hear, and that feeling was very comforting, giving a sense of understanding and belonging. Curiously, she realized that Yuta Asamura was dangerous for understanding her so well. Back to the present moment with Saki undressed in his bed, Yuta confessed that his sister was acting exactly like the girls he hated because they used their appearance to gain an advantage. From what she had said before, Saki didn't want to be seen that way, and it didn't make sense to think one way but act the opposite. Awkwardly, Saki argued that Yuta was the only one who understood her, but he replied that it wasn't about him, it was about her. Finally, after being covered by her brother, she apologized. Talking with him until dawn, the girl spoke about her father, about how she thought he was a nice guy. But after the company failed, he stopped trusting people. Since then, Saki's mother started working double shifts to support her daughter, but her father didn't even like that. Since Akiko worked in a bar, her husband thought it was a degrading job where women had to show off to get some money from men. Saki could understand that he had changed after what happened, but she never thought it was fair how he took it all out on her mother. Yuta agreed with this, especially since something similar had happened in his family. His mother cheated on his father, making Teichai paranoid about women for a while. Surprised, Saki asked if Yuta also became paranoid, but he just lowered his head in sorrow, not answering. Then Saki commented that she was quite similar to him, even regarding the problems they both had. Yuta agreed, but still believed they could get along well as brother and sister. In fact, to lighten the mood, he said he didn't mind being called Big Brother. Without saying what she thought about it, Saki laughed and thanked him for the opportunity. As she stood up, she stated that she counted on Yuta from then on. On that Saturday, Saki and Yuta had dinner alone after convincing their parents to go out for dinner together. Since it was her brother who thought of this, Saki believed he always thought of others. At the same time, this was why she couldn't call him Big Brother, because the moment she did, she felt she would depend on him for everything, and that was something she didn't want. In her diary, the girl apologized apologize to him for that reason. Day-to-day Saki usually referred to Yuta by his family name Asamura, and calling him that created a strange feeling in her heart very different from what she felt when she addressed him as brother. It was something so different from everything she had experienced that it didn't even have a name. After all, when she realized it, Saki started to have feelings for him, and this confused her mind so much that she could barely sleep. Before she only wanted to live alone, but now she thought that the side of her that had wanted so badly to be independent seemed somewhat pathetic. At the end of the day, she didn't understand what was happening to her heart. On Thursday, Yuta reflected on how a stepsister is a stranger who simply becomes your sister overnight because your parents decided to get married. No genetic relationship, no shared experiences. This shouldn't feel strange, but a month after starting to live with Saki, the boy noticed that she occupies a much more confusing place in his heart. When he asks himself what his relationship with his new stepsister is, he doesn't know how to answer. Upon arriving home, Yuta is greeted by the girl with an approach that's a bit more intimate than he's used to. She wants him to teach her modern literature because she did poorly in that subject, scoring 38 out of 100. Not that she expected anything else, as she has never been good at literature despite excelling in all other subjects. For some reason, Saki doesn't understand anything about the character's feelings. Yuta finds this strange because he has always seen the girl as someone who cares a lot about others. At least with him, she always tries to understand his side and bridge their differences. However, Saki believes the boy is wrong about this, as it is quite the opposite. She bridges their differences precisely because she doesn't understand others' feelings. Speaking of which, Saki is worried about her literature grade because if she doesn't pass the recovery exam, she'll have to take remedial classes during summer vacation, and she wanted to work during that period instead. Hearing this, Yuta apologizes for not having found a well-paying job yet, but Saki never intended to imply that. In fact, sometimes she even feels like she's taking advantage of him. Finally, Yuta agrees to help his sister with modern literature. Later, during their first exercise together, the makeshift teacher observes that his student does well on the essay questions at first, but her answers to questions about the books at the end are full of holes. So he asks if the girl has so much trouble with the books that she runs out of time to finish properly, and she responds that he hit the nail on the head, and it's annoying that he figured it out so quickly because it's not the best feeling in the world. Yuta apologizes if he was indelicate, but his sister understands that he's only pushing her buttons to help. Then Yuta notices that Saki had difficulty with the part about the book Sanshiro by Natsume Sosuke. So he explains that it's about falling in love freely. Yuta believes that some parts of this book are better understood today than when it was written. To facilitate learning, he asks what Saki had the most difficulty with. She says she didn't understand what Sanshiro was thinking, what Mineko was thinking, or their reasons for any of the choices they made. Yuta asks if she at least realized that the two were in love, as it's the main plot of the novel, but she didn't even notice that. Confused, she wants to know if it's the romantic kind of love, so Yuta recalls that the protagonist felt jealous when other men approached Mineko. Not fully grasping what that means, Saki comments that the guy should ask her to stop if he hates it so much, but Yuta believes there's a psychological barrier to being so direct with someone you love. Honestly, Saki doesn't like the idea of someone hiding their feelings and not saying what they think. Given this, Yuta proposes an exercise where Saki imagines a situation in which she couldn't express her feelings, perhaps the first time she fell in love, because she was so affected by her feelings that she couldn't think clearly. However, Saki responds that she has never had any experience with love, which she soon discovers Yuta hasn't either. According to her, what can be inferred from this is that literature grades have nothing to do with personal experience. Yuta agrees, but believes that you don't need to identify with the characters to understand what they feel. Sometimes it's more like a puzzle or a mathematical formula. Remembering that his sister is good at history, he explains that it's easier to understand what a book means when we understand the historical context of when the work was written. Using this technique, Yuta wants her to connect this with the book in question and see that this type of test has some patterns in the answers, which is already halfway to being approved. So Saki asks if Yuta thinks she will pass the recovery exam, and the boy is sure she will. Smiling at this, she promises to do her best. At night, the boy is impressed with the number of correct answers his sister achieved in the exercise. He proposed closed, so he thinks the only thing left is to master the books that will be on the test. Saki thanks and praises her brother as a good teacher, though he doesn't acknowledge it. Suddenly, the girl gets up and heads to her room, and Yuta has the impression she was smiling, but when he asks her, she couldn't say for sure. The next morning, Friday, Saki sees her brother coming down the stairs and gets up from the table to prepare something for him to eat as promised, but he insists that she keep focusing on her studies instead. So she sits down again and feels grateful, but Yuta makes it clear that she doesn't owe him anything. At school, the boy looks up some study techniques on the internet. Distracted, he doesn't notice Maya's arrival, who calls him Big Brother once again and comments that he still smells like the Asamura family. The boy complains that the girl is too close to him, but she believes they are already close enough for this. Once again, he asks the girl not to call him Big Brother at school, but Maya shows no sign of respecting this request. On the contrary, she calls him brother using numerous variations. Yuta remarks that the girl is too much today, and she acknowledges that she is, after all, she just finished her exams and is now going to release all the accumulated stress at once. Yuta asks if Maya didn't have to take any makeup exams, but she proudly replies that she has never failed any tests in her life and that her overall average is above 8. Yuta doesn't seem too impressed, which offends Maya. She then throws it in his face that he probably couldn't do the same, which he admits without much hesitation. Since Maya is so impressive, Yuta asks for a way to help Saki study more efficiently. Maya gives him a look that suggests he has ulterior motives. When Yuta complains about her expression, she says he's just a dedicated brother and nothing more. He adds that he's helping her as much as he can, but Saki is quite smart and will soon figure it out and won't need any more help. Maya agrees, knowing her friend. The issue is that Yuta needs a way to get there, and although Maya doesn't think she's anything special, she's willing to do what she can. First, she advises Saki to study while listening to music. Yuta asks if she recommends any particular style of music, but Maya only listens to what the app suggests because finding music on her own is a hassle. That said, she emphasizes that Yuta is a great brother and can be proud of it, though he doesn't think that makes him a good person. Personally, Maya thinks cooking for her younger brother makes her feel like a cool big sister, and that's enough for her. Later at work, Shiori sees Yuta distracted and teases him. In truth, he's fed up because it's the weekend, which means more customers and more hassles. Feigning shock, Shiori asks how he can speak that way about the beloved customers, to which he reminds her that she complains more than he does. At that moment, another employee passes by and Shiori asks her friend to be quiet and puts on a good girl face. As soon as the employee leaves, Yuta comments that she never shows her true self to others, and she replies that she stopped doing that after disappointing everyone in college. So far, only Yuta knows who Shiori really is, which she makes a point of highlighting. Thinking she's steering the conversation in a more inappropriate direction, he asks her to stop. When night falls and the shift ends, Yuta sees Shiori exhausted at the back table and tells her he's heading out. Poor Shiori can't even react because the store is packed and the air conditioning isn't working well, making her completely melt. Besides, she had to squat to carry a bunch of books, which destroyed her back. Yuta loses patience with her drama and leaves, but Shiori complains that just because he found a new young girlfriend, he's now abandoning her. Almost begging, she asks him to stay and share his adventures with his new little sister. Yuta doesn't have any adventures to share, but he would like some advice. Sitting down with his friend, he says he needs to find a way to make his sister study more efficiently, and was advised to have her listen to music while studying, but he doesn't know which type of music is best. Shiori immediately grabs her phone and searches for a suggestion. Having researched study music herself, she found some really interesting ones. She gives him an earbud to listen in good quality. Putting them in his ears, Yuta Asamura hears a lo-fi hip-hop track with infinite playlists on YouTube, the kind with the animated cover of a girl studying with a cat by the window. As he walks through the rainy streets on his way home, he absorbs the song and uses it as the soundtrack for his little journey. Meanwhile, Saki starts her new job on this rainy day, but it doesn't wipe the smile off her face, at least not yet. When the two get home, Yuta shows the music he was listening to his sister, who loves it immediately. He suggests she listen to it while studying, and she is surprised that her brother knows this style, but he actually heard it for the first time today because it was a recommendation from his coworker. Saki asks if it's that pretty girl who is an encyclopedia and Yuta confirms, a bit embarrassed. He admits that most of the recommendations come from her, so Saki imagines that the two are very close, and he explains that they do many shifts together. As Saki seems a bit distracted by this, Yuta asks what's wrong, but she says she just got lost in the music. She also wants to know if this coworker knows a lot about music, because that's how it seems. Actually, her brother says the girl is quite crazy to the point of being comical. Saki laughs, thinking that in any case, she seems interesting, which Yuta doesn't disagree with. Moving past that topic, Yuta confesses that his sister has done a lot for him, and he hopes to have repaid at least a bit with the idea of music during her studies. Shy Saki thanks him and promises to try it tonight, then gets up to clear the dishes. However, Yuta offers to wash the dishes today, so she heads to the hallway, turns, and wishes her brother good night, which he does in return. On Saturday morning, Yuta wakes up and heads downstairs, where he gets a light jab from his dad about it being a bit late. Calmly, he responds that he overslept, and when he glances to the side, he notices Saki's untouched breakfast, realizing she must have overslept too. According to her mom, the girl stayed up all night studying and fell asleep this morning. Akiko is worried her daughter might catch a cold from sleeping under the air conditioning with her belly exposed, and Yuta remarks that it's likely to be one of those extremely hot summers. Later at work, Shiori asks Yuta if he knows if more copies of the recently released book, The Rift of the Blue Knight, have arrived at the store. It's a movie adaptation of the anime. Being a fan, she wants to arrange the shelf with these copies as best as possible. Yuta mentions there's only one more copy besides the one she's holding, and when he learns that she likes the anime, he reads the book's synopsis next to her. Once a week in the park at midnight, a boy sees a girl carrying an old violin, while men from the past chase after her. As he uncovers the mysteries of the violin, the boy joins the girl on a journey through time and space, promising to compose the music of their future together. Finding the synopsis interesting, Yuta suggests they display the book covers facing forward on the shelf. As they arrange the books, they talk about the movie still playing in theaters but ending tomorrow to make way for the upcoming summer films. By the way, Shiori invites Yuta to watch the movie after work today. At first, Yuta seems a bit hesitant about the idea, but a little persuasion from his friend convinces him without much difficulty, as he's usually reluctant due to shyness, and since they're going out together, he needs to let his dad know he'll be out later. Shiori questions whether he should also inform people who care about him, like his sister, for instance. Yuta is confused by this statement, as he doesn't think Saki would mind, but Shiori's concern seems to be different. After meeting and spending some time together outside, the two friends arrive at the cinema, where Shiori plans to buy a diet soda. Yuta chuckles at the irony of ordering a huge buttered popcorn with a diet soda. Shiori brushes it off, and even says she'll get caramel popcorn. Yuta takes the lead in buying a giant bucket of popcorn for the session, and Shiori offers him some, but he doesn't usually eat while watching movies. Shiori asks him to make an exception today, and he decides to nibble on the popcorn. On the screen, a young beast boy runs hurriedly to a dead-end alley. Turning around, he feels the weight of his large backpack and loses some control over it. To make matters worse, at some point, he drops his things from the top of a wall and falls along with his belongings into a park. After recovering from the fall, he notices the girl he only meets at night appears again. She hands him an instrument that must stay alive in case she dies, and the Beast Boy feels the pressure of responsibility and hesitates a bit. The girl has only half a year left to live and cannot allow the instrument to fall into their hands. The boy asks who these people are, and the scene shifts to a city of beast folk where three individuals in suits are chasing the mysterious girl. The boy protects the girl as she explains that the violin she carries is very old. At night, they find shelter. The girl says she did everything she could, but he believes she's lying, as she must have had a special place she wanted to see in the end. After all, that's what she was looking for. With tears in his eyes, the boy adds that he also wanted to see it with her. He is sure there's still time if they leave now, so the girl holds his hand. At that moment, Yuta was watching Shiori for a while. After the movie, he walks his friend home, and she wants to return the favor somehow. Along the way, they find a vending machine, and she buys him a juice, asking if he wants her to open it. Yuta says it's not necessary and opens the can, to which Shiori jokingly says she could have filmed that move to show the world Yuta's talent. He plays along, asking for his privacy to be respected. Shiori then remarks that Yuta is really kind, and unused to such treatment from Shiori, Yuta feels confused. Then, she reveals she has something important to say, making the boy anxious. With some difficulty expressing herself, she finally confesses she has only half a year to live. Yuta is sure his friend is just joking again and extends his hand for them to keep walking. Seeing this, Shiori gets emotional for some reason, trying to say something but being overwhelmed by emotion and only managing to shrink in on herself, hiding her face as if nothing had happened. She gets up again and comments that the view from there resembles the park in the movie, which Yuta agrees with, but unfortunately, it reminds him that he can't travel through time like the characters. In a humorous tone, Shiori presumes it's really complicated, then takes the empty can from Yuta's hand and throws it away. Soon, they continue walking until they reach a point where Shiori decides to go on alone. Yuta was distracted and took a while to understand what Shiori was saying, as his mind was elsewhere. Startled, he thanks her for the music she showed him, the one he passed on to Saki to study. In response, Shiori smiles and asks him to send regards to his sister. Further ahead, she gets into a car, showing a certain sorrow in her eyes, like hidden suffering. From the top of the wall where he had dropped his backpack and himself, the Beast Boy now drops a suitcase, then opens it after the fall to see if everything is in order. Before his eyes, there is the mysterious girl, this time with a violin that she begins to play, leaving the Beast Boy emotional. As the music plays, the two slowly draw closer. Inside his suitcase, there's a guitar, which he uses to join the band that plays the beautiful melody amidst the falling Sakura petals. The sun in the park around them makes everything even more beautiful, and this beauty brings smiles to the musicians' faces as they exchange pure expressions of joy. The next day, at breakfast, Saki asks if it was her brother who put a blanket over her while she slept, and Yuta confirms that it was because he didn't want her to get sick before her makeup exam. Saki thanks him for the concern, but as humble as ever. Yuta thinks there's no need to thank him for that. Changing the subject, his sister wants to know if he went to the movies yesterday, which he confirms with some surprise because he hadn't mentioned it to her. He tells her it was a film called Fisher in the Blue Night and recommends that she see it too because he enjoyed it a lot. Saki replies that it would have to be after her exam, and even if she doesn't get to see it since it's based on a book, she might read it to practice her literature, as she did poorly in school and is paying for it now. By the way, taking advantage of the conversation, Saki asks if her brother is dating his co-worker, but Yuta explains that he doesn't have that kind of relationship with Shiori. Actually, they both love books, for example, which is why they always have a lot to talk about. Speaking of which, Saki would love to read more too, and Yuta admits it would be nice to have another friend who shares this hobby. When the young man arrives at work, his colleague asks for his help to restock the shelves. After a lot of work, they finally get everything they need sorted, and Shiori notices a customer looking for something she can't find, so she goes to help her. Approaching the girl, the employee realizes it's Yuta's sister and gets excited about it. Without pretending, she praises Saki's beauty and shows real joy in welcoming her there. Yuta asks his colleague to take it easy because she's getting too excited. Embarrassed, Saki says she's looking for a study book in addition to the book from the film her brother mentioned yesterday. Upon hearing this last part, Shiori gets even more excited that the girl is interested in the film and was about to invite her to the cinema, but Yuta cuts her off and stresses that his sister needs to study and not be led astray. In her defense, Shiori argues that the flowers along the wrong path are beautiful because they're watered with human blood. On the other hand, Yuta doesn't believe blood is a good nutrient for flowers, thinking water and sunlight seem much more effective. Losing the argument, Shiori changes the subject by reminding him it's not the time to be chatting because there's a customer there who doesn't know what to do. So the employee turns her attention back to the customer and calls her my colleague's little sister, to which the girl introduces herself as Saki Ayase. Amid Shiori's confusion, since she is Yuta Asamura's sister, Saki explains that she can also be called by her brother's surname, but that can sometimes cause confusion. Therefore, the employee decides to call the customer Saki. With that settled, Saki asks her brother if he recommends any other books besides the ones she's looking for, since he reads a lot and certainly has some good suggestions. Indeed, he has a few ideas of what Ayase might like to read. While Shiori is handling the cash register, Saki asks her brother if it's easy to help people, and he admits it is because it's a job based on small talk with people you don't necessarily like. That said, after they grab a copy of Fisher in the Blue Night, they need to get the study book, which is on the shelf one floor down on the right according to the employee. By the way, while her brother was helping a customer, Saki noticed the sign saying the store was hiring. Without saying anything about it, she tells her brother she's going to get the book and head home. Before leaving, she comments that the apron her brother wears suits him. When it's time to pay, Saki is impressed with how quickly Shiori wraps the books, and the worker believes that practice makes perfect after working there for so long. Speaking of which, she points out that Yuta is also quick on the draw, and upon hearing her brother's first name, Saki takes a moment to realize it was Asamura she was talking about, because that's what she's always called him. Later during the break, Shiori comments that her friend's sister is adorable, and he starts to get fed up with his colleague's obsession with his sister. Not wanting to come off wrong, Shiori reminds him that at her age she needs to ingest beautiful young girls frequently to avoid drying up. Yuta points out that the age difference between the two isn't significant, but Shiori believes there's a big difference between a high school student and a university student. In fact, speaking of youth, that girl had a very sweet and innocent smile according to the college student. For these reasons and more, Shiori thinks Saki is serious business, as it seems. Not liking where this conversation is heading, Yuta reminds his friend that Saki is his younger sister. On the morning of the upcoming Monday, Yuta Asamura was enjoying the breeze from one of the school balconies. Just like last time, Tomokazu showed up and remarked that Yuta had been spending a lot of time with Maya lately and that she had started calling him Big Brother. Yuta defended himself, saying he only sought her out to clear up some study doubts, but Tomokazu didn't pay much attention and offered advice in case his friend was starting to feel the stirrings of love like the expert he claimed to be. Ironically, Yuta responded that he couldn't wait for that moment. And as if on cue, at the end of the school day, Maya appeared with Saki to walk Yuta home, and she was coming along too. After his gossipy friend's comments on the balcony, Yuta seemed worried about what people would think if they found out the two girls were sticking so close to him. On the way, Saki apologized to her brother, explaining that she had to ask Maya for help with her studies. Judging by Maya's excitement, she seemed more like a child being taken to an amusement park, which concerned Saki a bit because she worried that bringing along a friend with such a lively personality might be annoying. As soon as they stepped into the house, Maya barged in ahead of them, an action that didn't sit well with the lady of the house. Saki apologized again, but Yuta, giving her the benefit of the doubt, assured her it wouldn't bother him. With that, everyone went their separate ways, and the sigh Yuta let out when he entered his room suggested things might be different from what he'd told his sister. Later, the two girls were studying surprisingly quietly until Yuta appeared in the living room and turned on the light. Saki assumed he had come to eat, so she got up to prepare something, but Yuta told her to focus on her studies since he had the day off and could make the food himself. Maya commented that Yuta was acting like a good husband, but he tried not to let it get to him and focused on the kitchen. Despite his best efforts, he had no idea how to fry even a simple egg, leaving him more lost than a blind man in a shootout until Maya suddenly appeared to see what he was up to. Yuta confessed that he wasn't very skilled in the kitchen and that even looking at a recipe on his phone didn't help him know where to start. So since Saki was busy reviewing her studies, Maya offered to help her. Energy levels still through the roof, quite different from the more subdued energy of the two siblings. Even as a child, Maya had been full of energy running around the neighborhood parks, and it seemed she'd managed to hold on to that part of her childhood. Besides, that time had also brought her some culinary knowledge, and she taught Yuta a few tricks so he could manage on his own next time, while Saki continued her revision listening to music through her headphones. After some time, Yuta even donned an apron, determined to finish preparing the meal. As the hours passed, Maya asked if there really was nothing between Yuta and his sister, to which he reminded her that it would be quite wrong if there were, even though she insisted that they weren't blood related and that one thing had nothing to do with the other. Yuta asked why Maya was so interested in the relationship between him and Saki, but she couldn't quite say. She just felt that Saki had changed a lot and wanted to understand why. For example, Saki was using more perfume than usual, whereas last year she used wet wipes instead of perfume whenever she sweated. According to Maya, this was a sign of someone in love, at least that's what the self-proclaimed Detective Narasaka deduced. In fact, she found it strange that Yuta had such a pretty girl following him around, yet he seemed not to care at all. Yuta explained that Saki's habit of using perfume was natural, as when you start living with someone of the opposite sex, you become more conscious of your body odors. It wasn't some state secret or a sign of love, it was just hygiene. Regardless, Maya continued to stir the pot, telling Yuta that Saki was looking directly at him. Indeed, she was, before quickly turning her face back to her studies. Yuta guessed that she might have noticed they were talking about her, which would be a big mistake considering how loudly Maya spoke, something Yuta made sure to mention. Still, Maya insisted she could recognize love when she saw it, so Yuta was more direct, stating that Saki might get upset if Maya kept up this conversation. But the redhead seemed immune to embarrassment and stuck to her point of view. Just then, the rice cooker beeped, signaling that the food was officially ready. Saki and Yuta enjoyed the sweet and sour pork together, with Saki complimenting the meal, which for better or worse had been made by her brother. Yuta took the opportunity to ask how her studies had gone, and she felt good about making significant progress, giving him credit for his help, although Maya had been annoyed by what she considered Saki's inefficient study method. Yuta agreed that it wasn't the most practical way, but he was careful not to hurt his sister's feelings. Either way, Saki reassured him not to worry, promising that she'd do well on tomorrow's test, and with that in mind, Yuta wished her the best of luck, bringing a smile to her face. The next day, Yuta was casually on his phone after the last class when Tamakasu came by asking if something was wrong. Yuta said no, so his friend left, and his departure reminded Yuta that he needed to get going if he wanted to make it to work on time. When he arrived, despite having claimed he was fine, Yuta seemed distracted and too deep in thought, so much so that he didn't do a great job at work that day. As Shiori was about to leave, she noticed the guy looking unusually worn out and mentioned that she'd never seen him so down before. Without explaining why, the employee apologized for his inattentiveness that day and said goodbye. Once home, he announced his return in the hallway. Suddenly, as he tuned in to the loud noise from outside, he realized that a heavy storm had just started and the clothes were still on the line, so he rushed to the balcony to gather them immediately. In the middle of the city, the unusually intense rain caused pedestrians to stop and seek shelter wherever they could. Yuta saw on the news that the rain had hit all of Tokyo, and due to the rising temperature and humidity, this rain might be accompanied by lightning in some areas. As time passed, the situation seemed to worsen, with water starting to flood some businesses in the Shibuya area right at rush hour. However, with his mind far from these updates, Yuta replayed in his head pleasant memories with his sister, like her thanking him for helping with her studies. With this in mind, he sent her a message asking if she'd be okay with the rain since she was working outside. As time went on and the girl still hadn't replied, Yuta kept messaging her, growing increasingly worried. Tired of waiting, he grabbed what he needed to brave the rain and headed out to find his sister. But just as he rushed into the elevator to hit the road, he literally ran into her. Surprised, she asked where he was going, and he felt too embarrassed to tell the truth in front of the other people there. When they were alone in the elevator, he calmly explained that he couldn't reach her and that the rain was getting worse, and he was afraid Saki might have done poorly on her exam and wasn't paying attention to what was happening around her. Understanding the concern, Saki apologized for making her brother worry, and regarding the exam, she admitted she didn't think she did as well as she'd hoped. With that, she showed him her score, 94 out of 100. Yuta remarked that she passed, but she pointed out that her brother had scored 96, so she hadn't beaten him. Yuta thought she was being too hard on herself, but the girl seemed genuinely frustrated. Shifting back to the other topic, she once again apologized for the delay and explained that she had gone shopping at a different place today, the department store. Yuta asked if she had bought something to celebrate passing the test, but actually she wanted to get something to repay her brother for his help, as he had introduced her to new music, taught her to read modern literature, and even made dinner for her yesterday so she could focus on studying. Still, Yuta felt it was no big deal compared to the meals she cooked every day, but as Saki always said, she liked to give more than she received. With that, she promised to prepare a special meal for her brother as much as possible, unless Yuta only trusted older and more experienced people to prepare something more complicated. Yuta assumed his sister sister was talking about Shiori and questioned what she had to do with this, so Saki explained that her brother was the only person that woman could trust, and Yuta figured it was because they worked together. Hearing this, Saki moved closer to her brother and assured him that he could trust her just as much as he trusted Shiori. She would love for her brother to rely on her for household tasks, acknowledging that his younger sister could be stubborn sometimes, which is why she was talking that way. So as the older brother, Yuta asked if a well-prepared meal meant her mission was a success, and the girl confirmed it did. With that said, they noticed they were still alone in the elevator and wondered what they were doing there. On the way to the apartment, Yuta wanted to know why his sister hadn't replied to his messages, and she explained that her battery often ran out from listening to the music he had shown her. The next day, on a Wednesday afternoon, the teacher reminded them that summer break would start tomorrow and dismissed the students. Tomikazu remarked that Yuta seemed to be in a hurry, and he was indeed, as he needed to get to work quickly. According to his friend, the most important thing was that Yuta had regained his good spirits after yesterday. When he arrived at work, he did seem more relaxed until his sister showed up at the bookstore and headed straight to the staff room. The boss approached him and asked him not to overdo it if he was tired, so Yuta took the opportunity to ask if there was a new employee. The boss replied that someone named Saki Ayase had come in for a job interview at the establishment. If you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to hit that like button. Your support helps motivate me to keep bringing you each episode. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. See you in the next episode.